Coming up on another solo show adventure.
This sounds like the narrative they gave us for Galaxy's Edge in the beginning with our magic bands. So your magic band, you would go on the Falcon, you would be great. They would know that the next place you go, they would say, hey, here comes the fabulous pilot or the bum pilot or whatever.
I remember being at Star Wars Celebration in, I think it was Orlando, and they talked about Galaxy's Edge and how that was going to be an interactive thing. And they said, depending on how you do on the Falcon could determine how you're treated later on in the day. And my buddy going, well, now I know we all know we got to smash the Falcon up.
We've got a full house in the Solo Studios as Stan welcomes Patrick, Ed, and Sam to discuss the Galactic Starcruiser, what went wrong, and what's next. The Solo Show, as always, is brought to you by Victor Naraki Realtor, serving Disney in the greater Orlando area with celebratingflorida.com and disneyatyourdoorstep.com. Realtor Victor Naraki makes living near Walt Disney World a reality, specializing in all the communities surrounding Disney. Whether you're looking to relocate or invest in a new property, maybe you want a vacation home for your retirement. With over a decade of experience in the area, Victor will adapt to your needs, help you find the right property, or get you the best price for your property. Reach out to him today on his website, celebratingflorida.com, or at disneyatyourdoorstep.com. Follow him at Victor Naraki Realtor on Facebook, and don't forget to tell him that the Solo Show sent you. The Solo Show is coming into range, sir.
I'm on the leader.
Broadcasting from the Solo Studios in a second-story walk-up bachelor apartment in Mos Espa, here in Winnipeg, Manitoba, in the center of North America, on this little planet we call Earth, this is the Solo Show. On this adventure, Stan welcomes first-time visitor to the Solo Studios, Patrick, as well as Ed from the Disney Nerds podcast and Sam from Sam's Disney Diaries to talk about the Galactic Starcruiser, what went wrong, and what's next for the feature. And now, please welcome your host, the guy who wrote all the dialogue for the Gonk droid. Here's Stan Solo.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Solo Show. I am Stan Solo as always, and joining me today, I got three co-hosts. We're doing a roundtable discussion about the Star Wars Galactic Starcruiser. What happened to it? It's closing down, I heard. Let's find out who's joining us. We're going to start off with Patrick. He's new to the show. Patrick, welcome to the show, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks for having me. So I'm your everyday normal guy that fell in love with the Starcruiser. I got invited by my father-in-law right around the time, well, way before it opened. He made multiple reservations throughout the year because he knew he was going to try to go and do it. But I got to go on the first one, and that was end of March. So right around when it first started, and I've now gone on it a total of 3 times.
Wow. 3 times. That's crazy, man. That's quite enough for all 3 of us.
I could be on here all day. You could ask all the questions. I'd try to answer them all.
Alrighty. Also joining us from the Disney Nerds podcast, Ed, how are you today, my friend? And tell us, you've been on the show before, but what's your history with the Starcruiser?
Hey, Stan. My history of the Starcruiser is that I'm an incredible Star Wars fan that loved the idea when it came out up to until the day they announced how much it was going to cost to stay there. So unfortunately, in my world, it kind of got ruled out a little bit, but the idea and everything all behind it is just so intriguing, and it always has been. So I'm very interested in talking about it.
Yeah, I think I'm a bit like that. It was the budget kind of threw me. Would you have considered going with a couple of buddies and splitting a room 3 ways? Was that something that was a potential of happening someday?
Yeah, that would be a no-brainer. I doubt that would have ever happened Disney-wise, but that would have definitely worked. Under 2,000 and less maybe would have been more intriguing for me to at least make it thinkable. Mm-hmm. But
yeah, that's kind of the situation I was in. If I could have found a couple of buddies that were going to be going the same time and as doing a solo trip and it might have happened. How about you, Sam? Welcome to the show again. Sam's been here enough times. He's just about ready for his gold jacket.
What is up, Captain Solo? How are you? Patrick and Ed, good to see you guys.
How is Sam's DisneyDiaries.com going?
It's going well. We got a lot of cool things going on over there. Lots of changes happening at Disney World. So the last thing we did was a walkthrough of Dino-Rama, just kind of looking around at the things that used to be and what's gone and what might come next and speculating. But that's a whole nother show, Zootopia, that we'll get to later sometime.
We got to do it.
But for now, we want to talk about Star Wars, right?
Yes. What's your history with the Starcruiser?
So my history of the Starcruiser is researching it, watching this thing come to fruition, and attending the media event, where we did some pretty interesting things that we'll get to later. I think early on, it was clear this is not a hotel. This is not for the average Disney parks goer that wants to stay in a Star Wars themed hotel. This is a 2-day interactive, immersive experience that you can say is a 48-hour escape room of sorts. Here you go, have fun, do what you can. And there are parts of it that are more escape room, like the engine room. We'll get back to that. But it's not a hotel, right? When you think hotel at Disney World, you think, oh, I'm going to get the Little Mermaid sweep over at Pop. I'm going to check in. The kids are going to like it. We're going to get on a bus and we're going to go over to Magic Kingdom and we're going to watch fireworks and this is going to be awesome. That is not what you're doing on the Starcruiser. In fact, it's a complete opposite. It's more like going to the port at Cape Canaveral and getting on one of the Disney ships and staying on the boat for 2 days at sea and then coming back. It's not a Star Wars hotel. It's an immersive experience, which begs the question, is the world ready for a 2-day immersive experience?
Apparently not.
Well, some of us are. And that's kind of my point, because some of us are, we're into it. And look, I am a huge Star Wars fan and I would do this thing in a minute, as Ed was mentioning. My challenge is my entire family is not as into it as I am.
Yeah.
And they would be like, where's the bus to Epcot? And there is none. And that's the problem. You couldn't do this as a family. You did this as a Star Wars geek fest. And I'm good with that. Trust me, I am.
So for Sam to do it, he would have to pay for a hotel for his family and for the Starcruiser on top of it, because they ain't coming with them.
Right. Well, one of them would, and they'd be right there and it would probably be an incredible experience. But the other two are going to be making their own memories at whatever hotel they're staying in. And that's the struggle that I had and why I hadn't booked it. That, and as Ed mentioned, the cost.
Yeah. Okay. So Patrick, do you know a little bit about the history? Like, when did it open? Because you mentioned you went to one of the very first cruises.
Yes. So the media preview that you, Sam, went to was, I think, a week or two before the actual opening.
Yes.
I believe the first official cruise was March 1st of 2022. I went March 21st or something like that. So it was like the 8th cruise. Let them get some of the kinks out. But that's when it officially opened.
So it officially opened with 22.
Yes.
Right. This was originally announced at Expo in 19.
Yes.
So in 19, 2 years later, there's a lot of planning already involved. But
well, they officially announced the Galactic Starcruiser Halcyon through a poster in Oga's Cantina.
Yeah, which is really cool.
Oh,
I mean, it's true. That is cool, but nobody knows that.
Yeah, I had no idea about that. Ed, did you know that?
Because hardly anybody's getting in there. So
I mean, I'm kind of jumping ahead here, like spoilers.
No, go ahead.
The price and the lack of marketing are what killed it.
Right. I agree with the marketing. I think they hid too much ahead of time for what you can expect, that you didn't know what you're going to get for the cash.
True.
Yes. Yeah.
And Ed, you were saying that if you could get it under $2,000, if you would go with 5 people in the room in a not peak season, you could get it to about $1,600.
Oh, perfect. But then how many rooms have 5 people accommodations on the cruiser?
So there's 100 rooms. There's one Grand Captain suite, and then there's I think 3 or 4 what they call Galaxy suites, and then there's normal cabins. The normal cabins either sleep 4 or 5. Some of those rooms have a pull-down 5th, kind of at the foot of the big bed.
Gotcha.
Let me ask you this, Patrick, because you've been on. How much time did you spend sleeping in
Not
the
much.
room? That's kind of my point. You're in there for 48 hours, and you're maybe sleeping for 8 total?
The second time I went, my father-in-law wanted a Galaxy class suite, which I think that can sleep up to 6, depending on how things are configured. He had the separate bedroom to himself. My wife and I split, and she was on the pull-down cot in the living room, or what they would consider the living room, and I slept on the sofa.
you're not sleeping that much. I mean,
no.
because at that point, my mind is going to be, I got to get as much out of this experience as I can, right?
Specifically so I went on the May 3rd, 4th, and 5th trip most recently. I was a part of the super fan, like May the 4th be with you super fan cruise. There is a group of super fans that's sort of like, hey, we're going to do this. And about 150 people on board knew about this and were go full bore at it. Okay. So on that trip, I flew in the day of. I woke up at about 2 a.m. to make sure that I wasn't going to miss my departure. And then I did something that no one had ever done on the Starcruiser, as far as I know. And I hosted a narrative-based after-hours sabacc tournament in the bar.
Cool.
It was like a bounty hunt sort of thing. You had to come to us, say the right thing, we'll give you a thing. You got to meet us here. You play a tournament, you win. You got a code, and then you get to open the Camp Tono. And we were giving out bricks of Beskar.
Nice.
Oh, awesome.
See, that is...
As far as I know, no one had ever done that. But to finish the whole point of that, I didn't go to sleep until 1:30 with the time change. I was up for 24 hours, and then I woke up at 6 a.m. the next morning because we wanted to be the first transport down to Batu to get in line for the limited edition Cal Kestis Saber that was coming out,
which was the May the 4th thing.
Yeah.
So how many trips was that for you? That was
my
one?
third.
All right. So look, that is you, super fan, creating your own experiences completely outside of scope for everything else that's going on the Starcruiser.
Yes.
Your first two cruises were about that. So that's awesome. And I love it, but that's not, I mean, you're the definition of the fan that this was built for.
Yes.
It's going to get the money and get there three times.
Yes. And so my father-in-law did very well for himself in his professional career. And I'm the Star Wars like uber nerd that he wants to bring with him for these experiences.
Sure. That's cool.
So I'm incredibly fortunate to go, right? If I had to pay for it out of my own pocket, I would have used a suite mate finder and found a room at some random time. And that probably would have been the only time I could have gone. But I would have saved up as much as I possibly could have.
I get it.
So you mentioned you're there with your wife. So while you're doing the sabacc table competition and you're handing out Beskar things and you guys are drinking from the Cantino, what's your wife doing during all this? Is she right there with you, or is she?
So on my second trip, my wife came, and we hadn't done that yet. On our second trip, one of the paid actors, knew who we were just because we were returned passengers. And he kind of gave us a little like, oh, you guys are this, right? And we were like, yeah, yes, and improv, yes, and. And on our third trip, we basically turned that into a real thing. So on the second trip when she was with us, we weren't doing that yet. We were just hanging out in the bar and being passengers.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah. So okay.
Very
so now
nice.
on the third trip, though, when you went, you guys,
She was not there.
okay. She didn't go
was
to that
actually.
one. She didn't.
I owe her so many brownie points because she watched the kids and let me go do my Star Wars thing. I was in Star Wars on May the 4th.
Okay.
And that is with her dad, though, too. So she's helping her dad out, too, by letting him come along to justify the trip and help him out with that. So that's perfect.
Yeah, that is so cool.
So I think, Stan, if I can, you got to kind of step back a second because the Starcruiser is set at a very specific time in the Star Wars, at least as it is today, the ship that's there. It's set at a very specific timeline on the Star Wars universe. And better or worse, you can argue it both ways, whether it fits or not, but it is very specific into what you're walking into, where you are in the galaxy, and when you arrive at Batu. And that's set right between The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker. And a very specific timeline of a couple of days when everything's happening at Galaxy's Edge, at Batu, in the park, and everything happening in the Starcruiser is all connected together and all interwoven in ways that you can't even imagine. And that's really, Patrick, what they're putting you into. Go and experience this. Have fun. Oh, and by the way, maybe come up with a backstory before you step on board, something that you're doing, and what do you want to do? Are you looking to smuggle some coaxium? Are you looking to help the Resistance? Are you looking to help the First Order? Or are you just looking to sell some used light speeders? What was your backstory, Patrick?
Okay.
Was it the same all three times?
No.
Oh,
No.
okay.
It grew. So the first time I went spoiler free. I knew nothing. I had Jedi robes because I thought it was just going to be like kind of a nerd convention, which I wanted to be there. But that's what I thought I was walking into. And then woke up the second day and you check your data pad, your phone, and you have all these messages and all these missions, and all of a sudden it clicked of what I was actually supposed to be doing and how I was supposed to be playing. And that day I started my backstory for my second trip. Like when I was on Starcruiser the first time was when I was making my backstory for the second time. So the overall rule I would say to people is if you have a reservation in these next 4 months and it's your first time going, you don't need to have an incredibly detailed backstory. Have a reason to be on. Maybe try not to be spoiled, but know which of the main groups of people you want to be hanging out with and have a reason to speak to them. And that person. If you want to be a smuggler, have a backstory that is somewhat nefarious. If you want to work with the Resistance, have a backstory that is crystal clean. If you want to work with the Saja, the Force wielders, then you want to have a backstory that is somewhat mysterious. Something's happening to you, and so on. So my backstory is that I was an engineer. In real life, I'm an engineer. So I just said I was a terrestrial engineer. And I was doing a inspection on a building that was about to be demolished on Naboo. A certain senator that we don't say the name anymore, right? And I heard something screaming at me from the wall. And I took my sledge to it, and it was a group of lightsabers. I don't know what these are. I don't know what it is. I touched it, and it stopped screaming, and so I've kept it with me. And I've heard the Saja can help me. What the heck is going on? That's the only, and nobody needed to really know that. But when a Saja approached me, I got to dump once on that one person, and
you're in.
I'm in. I got to see the big reveal.
Amazing to me how they recall all of that and remember, and the systems that are happening. They all have earpieces, so you know things are going. And
there are things going, but because I'm the extrovert and friendly person I am, I've made friends with a lot of cast and crew.
Cool.
Like actors, Disney cast members, nobody like behind the scenes really above that, but people that you see. I've made some friendships with them. And a lot of those actors, they're memorizing. They're taking notes backstage. Like there's a smuggler.
Okay, walk back and
Wraith Cole, right? He has a book in his back pocket and he's writing names down.
I got it. That's how they're remembering.
Cool.
And that's cool. Part of it.
That's got to be taught. That's how they want them to do it.
There's no way, to get back to the marketing, there's no way that you can possibly get the experience across unless you do it. And that's part of the problem.
You're right.
Like, Sam, you experienced a 4-hour condensed version of it, and they may have changed it a little bit from that. And there is no way that you as a person could fully experience it and do your professional job at the same time and give it the justice that it needs. And that first marketing that they did was bad.
You're absolutely right. And you just hit on so many places where those actors that you talk about, the notes, the attention to detail, that is a lot more expensive for Disney than a cast member.
Yeah.
That's part of the challenge, and it's what you're paying for. It's the premium in all of that detail, the fact that they remember you and they know, look, when I walked into this as a media event, and you really don't know what you're walking into when you walk into the room, and I would expect this is how it starts. You're just in the gathering hall, like you walk into the ship's atrium, and you're standing there, and there's all these different Star Wars characters, and you just have conversations with them, right? You just kind of talk to them, and you get to know them. And the first one that walks up to you goes, hey, you say, where are you from? And you mess up and you say city in the United States, and they go, what the hell's that? I don't know what the hell. It only took me one to figure it out. So the next time somebody walks up to you and says, where are you from? You have a different story, and they'll drill into it and ask questions about it and understand. And it's wow.
Every cast member, as far as I know, has done at least 3 months of training before they step on board to the Halcyon as a crew member in training. Sometimes they'll rove around in packs and they'll have a little in training under their name badge. And from what I understand, they're trained for 3 months before they even step on board for a training position. And those actors, some of the actors worked, as far as I know, for a year before they actually were on stage and opened the show.
That's amazing. Good.
So I'm assuming that they're classified as entertainment then, as far as just cast members would be?
Yes, exactly.
A streetmosphere level or even above that?
From what I understand, they're on 6-month contracts. There's I don't want to give too much away because I don't want to like get anybody in trouble.
Yeah, no, don't.
Almost like cruise ship entertainment, though, if you think about it that way too.
Yeah. There are some crew and cast members on board that they only play one role on board the ship, but that does not allow them to be full time. But because they are a 6-month contract worker, they will also do a role in Galaxy's Edge. But that's only to fill in those gaps to make 40, from what I understand.
Gotcha.
Got it.
That makes sense.
Almost
Those
like
main characters need to stick with you for the whole 2-day experience. You can't swap
There have
them
been
out.
snafus, and I think if anybody moves forward with immersive entertainment, I think there might be less interaction with the bad guys. There have been reports of people kind of forgetting that these people are actors, and first order stormtroopers, first order officers being spoken to, treated in an inappropriate way. They've actually changed their verbiage when you get on board. They tell you, do not touch the actors unless the contact is initiated, things like that. They want it to be immersive. That there will be people that are going to put their arms around you and hug you, but they don't want you like checking the first order stormtrooper to block their way.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I could see how it goes. Look, when
But
you get a whole bunch
forget.
of geeks in a room,
Well, not just you get a whole bunch of
is a
anybody in a room.
physical
You get hockey fans or
That's the
whatever.
thing.
Yeah, it's going to be the same thing.
But
and if it's so immersive that you are very much in the moment, some people are going to let that emotion fly. This is something once in a lifetime, so I can understand.
I've seen one person blow up, and it was on my first voyage in March. I think it was still full cruises and not all Star Wars huge fans. So there were some people that booked this because it was the Star Wars thing and the next Disney thing. And on like the first night or maybe the second morning, this guy was like, would somebody please just talk to me normally? And because they're all going to talk to you like you're in Star Wars.
No
that's
breaking
exactly
character.
what I was talking about.
They are not.
Yeah.
You are on this,
Which
So-
is funny because that's the reason I would want to go on, because I don't want to be talked to normally for the 2 days. You know what I mean? Like I want to be.
Yeah.
Well,
can
that's the
respect
guy
that.
whose kids convinced him to go,
Yeah.
and he took the kids, and he's like, "Can I just find a bar and have a bourbon?"
Yeah, exactly.
That doesn't exist.
Yeah.
He was
gonna go
hanging
to
out
the
in the
bar
climate
and-
simulator a lot.
In the climate simulator, yes, which is
It's a courtyard. It's a courtyard.
It's the only place where you can
Does
actually
it-
see outside.
And does it change climate, or is it just that same? I saw
No, you walk
Whatever it's
outside.
like in Orlando, it's
Whatever
it's
the
walk-
temperature
yeah.
in Orlando, that's what the temperature is in the climate simulator.
It's
So
the
literally
middle of
something
the top
outside.
level. You
Yeah.
can't see anything around you, but above you is real sky and real
Yeah.
trees.
But the idea
what
is
raining
it's similar to like a Star Trek
Yes,
holodeck.
it will rain.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
It's not the holodeck.
Did
Right,
you,
and I
did
actually
you
assumed
Patrick,
from a couple videos it was.
as you went along to these different times that you went, did you find that the people were getting more into it and realizing more what it was because it had been around a while versus the first time compared to like the last time you went? I mean, the last time you went, I think May 4th had to have been the ultimate. But the middle
was
time you
insane.
went, was there more people that kind of understood what they were supposed to do and were going with? Because the first time you went, it was still pretty darn new.
First time I went, like I said, I didn't understand what I was doing until the second day.
Yeah.
Because
how about the other
there's stuff
guests?
that you do. Nobody knew. There were some people that may have watched some of those YouTube vloggers and to just see everything. But even those YouTube vloggers were keeping some of the details a secret.
Or they weren't telling us. Well, there's two different things there, right? Because they did not tell us the whole story.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there were some YouTubers that did the entire. They paid themselves for the first paid
For the
voyage,
first voyage,
and
yes.
they tried to. I think they did 6 hours of YouTube videos over the course of like multiple videos, trying to just show everything. But
Yep.
it's still really hard to do that. That's going to kind of be my Band-Aid as I move forward.
But even then, you can't, because as you mentioned, you walk in and you sort of pick a path based on your backstory and what you want to learn. And these actors are going to pull you into different storylines that are simultaneously happening that all cross.
You can't do the same thing every time you go. It literally impossible. The best way I have come up to describe it is when you go to work from your house every day, you take the same route, you're going to get to work, but are you in the same lane at the exact same time every day? Are all the cars around you the exact same cars? No. And
Right.
so every time you do Starcruiser, yeah, you're going to do this, and you're going to take that right turn on this street, and you're going to go over here, and you're going to get to the same place, but it's going to be different every time.
Somebody
and
might
if you
cut
made
you
the
off one
left
day going to
turn,
work, and that will
it could
change
be.
things.
Or you make the left turn, which brings you back around, because you could
Right.
find yourself hanging out with the scoundrels the whole time, not aware of this fight between good and evil, because you're just worried about smuggling.
The first time I went, I mean, I'm not worried about spoiling it because it's sold out and nobody gets to go anymore.
And these stories will change. But more
if they ever open
importantly,
it up. The first time I went, I had no idea that there was a holocron, a Jedi holocron on board, and then Rey shows up and is fighting Kylo Ren, and there's this whole thing, and the holocron is revealed, and then Yoda shows up, and I missed all of this. What was going on? I was doing this other thing completely. I was not bored. I was doing a heist because I was with the scoundrel. I was doing this other thing that was happening simultaneously. It's was incredible.
One of the biggest complaints I heard about it, and perhaps why it wasn't as interesting as people wanted, or not interesting, but people could do it, was the continuity. Meaning, kind of like you just explained, where you're on one cruise and you just missed the holocron scene because you were doing something normal. You should have been doing. You should have been on the heist. So, do you think that played into why people might not have wanted to do this, or not heard about this, or got mad they missed something?
I think the price in and of itself is the number one complaint.
Yes.
If it was $1,500 for a family of two, maybe $2,500 for a family of four, if that was something that you could get it down to and have the experience be the same, which I guess is not possible. That's why they're closing. I think it would be okay, because when you felt like you missed something, you would have incentive to keep going back. But at the price point that it was at, there's no way that there are some people that are going to get to do it 3, 4, 5 times unless they are in that upper echelon of just, yeah. And I'm not, that's not me. I married into it.
Yeah.
It is interesting that it's not the same experience for everyone, right? Because you do end up on these different tracks, but they're all following that same timeline. They're all interconnected. They all involve excursions to Batuu during your 2-day journey. The embarking process, the disembarking process, all that's interesting. But I think a bigger question is, we could talk about the experience, but where do they go from here with this huge asset that they've constructed? Which, by the way, it's a concrete building on the outside. Inside, you're completely submerged in the Star Wars. And some examples that I'll give: the bridge, the lightsaber training, the cantina, you name it. All of those things tie together. Now Disney's going to have this asset. And by the way, Ed, you mentioned before, they talked about learning. They've learned. There are new things that they've learned, things that continue to enhance experiences. Look, during the media event, some of the rumblings and rumors that we heard were, if this Star Wars experience is successful, Disney's going to open a Marvel one on the West Coast. And they're going to use Avengers Academy to have a very similar thing.
Yeah,
Perfect.
They were, right?
Yeah.
Because there you get on a city bus and you take the city bus from this Marvel campus and drops you off at Avengers Academy. You don't have to theme it. You're in the city. You're on a bus, right? Well, they did it differently for Starcruiser. From the media experience, and I want to tie a couple of things together here, Stan, if I can. From the media experience, they sort of took us in and they gave us a little backstory, then put us in an area. For example, all right, you're on your voyage and something's happened. You were told to go to the engine room, and they put us in the engine room, a bunch of media, and they left. And then you just kind of hung around and you started to touch things and play with things. And the next thing you know, Chewbacca comes around and it's like, Chewie, what's going on? And he's trying to talk to you and he's being real squirmish. And then he disappears and all of a sudden there's First Order troopers coming through. And you're like, what is going on here? That is just one example of countless. Patrick, how many do you think there were? There are 50 of these things.
Interactions?
So
Interactions
there
or
are
unique
some
areas.
Yeah, there are some, for simplification, I'm going to call them games. There are some games
Yes.
that are used multiple times.
Okay.
But so the physical motions that you're going to go through will be repeated 1, 2, at most, I've heard 3 times. But the narrative reason for you to be in that room doing that thing will change, and the experience will be altered slightly. Like, for example, you said the engine room. In the narrative story, if you just try to get into the engine room and you try to scan your band, you're going to get a message 10 minutes later from the scoundrel, and he's going to say, "Hey, I saw that you were trying to get into the engine room. Maybe I can give you access, and you'll help me out sometime later." And you have to go,
which now gets you on the list for that thing.
You have to do a little mini game in one of the places that you log in, and then once you do that mini game, you get access to the engine room, and you walk in, and then in the engine room is mini games. Once you start playing those and start to get to understand those, if you follow the mechanic Sammy, who is on his first day there,
he's the man, by the way.
He may ask you for help doing something later on, and you're going to use what you learned just playing around to fix all the systems in the ship as a team with the 30 other people that are in there with you. And there's a narrative reason that you're doing it. Same thing for the bridge.
The bridge is awesome, by the way. Love the bridge and lightsaber training, and you can keep going.
Yeah.
In fact, we might get back to those. But here's go ahead.
So
I was going to say real quick.
Go ahead.
This sounds like the narrative they gave us for Galaxy's Edge in the beginning with our magic bands. So your magic band, you would go on the Falcon, you would be great. They would know that the next place you go, they would say, "Hey, here comes the fabulous pilot," or the bum pilot or whatever. And it carried on through it. The Starcruiser looks like it picked up on that, and that's what they were using. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And hopefully they'll might bring it back.
I remember being at Star Wars Celebration in, I think it was Orlando, and they talked about Galaxy's Edge, Galaxy's Edge, and how that was going to be an interactive thing. And they said depending on how you do on the Falcon could determine how you're treated later on in the day. Right. And my buddy going, well, now I know we all know we got to smash the Falcon up. We'll make it a more fun experience.
Right.
It's true.
So, Patrick, you mentioned that it was marketed poorly. We all talked about the price, how much it costs. Is there no undefining reason? Was it the timeline that they chose? Is Galaxy's Edge in a timeline that Star Wars fans generally aren't too excited about? Is it a combination of everything? What was the reason we think that it? I mean, there was successes because they did learn a lot. Was it poorly planned? Was it the Imagineers came up with these brilliant ideas? You always hear these stories back in Walt's time when Walt would come up with these ideas and just tell the Imagineers to figure it out. Is this a case where they came up with these great ideas and the Imagineers never figured it out? What happened?
I think it really did go down to marketing, honestly. That it was before its time. There had never been anything immersive like this. There's Meow Wolf, which is an immersive art exhibit. There's Sleep No More, which is an immersive like Hamlet or Macbeth production. Sure. There's something at Knott's Berry Farm, but I think the story is continuous each day, so it doesn't reset the way that Starcruiser does, and it's not as in depth as Starcruiser is. So there's really nothing like this. So when it came to asking people to pay this much, unless you go and just try it, you're not going to understand what your money is going to. Because like you guys have all touched on, it's not just that you're doing these games, because games are fun, but you can do games in Disney. All of the rides are gamified, but you're paying. Yeah, you're paying for the training that all of the people have on board. You're paying for the immersion. You're paying for the five class service. I brought something on board that broke, and I asked them for ultra bonding fluid, and they knew exactly what I meant. They gave me some super glue. And
well, let me ask you this then: if it's the point that we're all agreeing it's the price, the big price that's kind of kept us all out of there, what do you think was the lion's share of the reason for that cost? Like, what was the thing? Because what you kind of said sounds like a cruise ship, And first class on a cruise ship definitely falls underneath or in the range of what we're talking about on the Starcruiser, and that's for like 7 days or something.
I think it was the tech that went into it, and personnel. They said running it on a daily basis was really expensive, is what I've heard. And so the training of all the people, I think, is just expensive. But the screens that are on the bridge are all patented tech that was made just for Starcruiser. All your windows, all your portholes in the rooms, that's all patented tech. I don't know if this is widely known. Every one of the crew members, each one of the cast members that the paid actors, the characters, have a geolocation like button on them, and if you are physically within their proximity when they push it, it will add to your algorithm and change what happens to you throughout the cruise.
Very cool.
So if you get invited to, say, a secret meeting with the captain, she's going to be pushing that button throughout the talk because she's going to be moving throughout the crowd, and everybody who's there, their magic band's going to get picked up, and it's going to go into your algorithm. Like, really, it was tech.
Which was kind of what we were promised in Galaxy's Edge at the very beginning.
Right. Yeah.
And this actually kind of lets us look to the future because, like I said earlier, the quote that Disney came out with, the last couple lines, were all about how happy they were they tried this experiment with only 100 rooms, and they're looking forward to bring it to a big, larger selection across the parks and the hotels. So that might mean where that patented technology on the screens might be coming to our rooms, which brings up the question, how helpful was the droid inside your room on the screen?
The droid in your room, I did not get to experience all of the things that she could have done.
You were never in the room.
We were in the room enough to play with her a little bit. There were certain things that you could do if you were on the First Order path with that. Her name is D309. It would change.
D3, it's not a droid physically. D3 is a hologram of sorts inside of the screen, right? Do you ever meet D3 physically?
Within canon, D3 is a physical droid.
Yes, agreed. Right. But on the Starcruiser.
Physically on the Starcruiser, she is a virtual, essentially AI.
Think like C-3PO on Star Tours. Basically, when the screen closes in front of you, he's on the TV screen talking back.
Right, they're on the TV screen, and that's what you see. And
except she actually responds to you. If she will ask you questions, and she will say, "What are you trying to do here on the Halcyon?" And you say, "We're trying to make partnerships." Oh, that's very good. The Sublight Lounge might be a good place for meeting people.
Perfect.
Was there a delay in her responses during the media event? I noticed a little delay when we asked questions, and that could have been because she wasn't in story. She wasn't in story when we were doing it, and I get that. So
here's our premise for the future: is that we'll have her in all of our rooms at Walt Disney World now as our personal concierge.
Well, hey, Disney could be. Can I talk to D3?
Or that's our new Genie Plus.
Either way, if you pick Star Wars, right? Because it's that if you're a Star Wars fan and your profile is Darth Vader, like mine is, very easily that could be. But if you're a Muppets fan like Stan, maybe the Mayhem's going to lead you to things.
Or in the park hotel room, you have a family, so you're going to have the younger characters on the screen.
Sure.
As adults, you're going to have older characters on the screen, or you get to choose who gives you your announcements.
Yeah. As far as I could see, D3 could only really code with one person on board, one person in the room. So if multiple people were trying to do different story paths, it would be whoever signed in first or whoever was the reservation holder.
Very interesting. Nice. All right. Let me get on this path because we sort of talked about these different games as you put them, Patrick, and I love that because that's what it is. They're different games that were happening. We know that the Starcruiser is attached to Batuu, to Star Wars Galaxy Edge, through the shuttle, right, which is a fully immersive ship that departs and arrives. Tell me about that experience because that's one we did not do.
I will tell you that is actually one of the places that they cut costs. It was supposed to have full screen windows showing you the outdoors.
Concept art looked great.
Yeah.
And physically it's a box truck that's made to look really cool on the inside.
But on the inside, you don't know it's a box truck. You're getting on a transport.
You will never know that it's a box truck. It is hooked up to specific things. They make sure that the truck itself has a portal on the side that extends. So it's essentially like a little itty bitty jetway, right? You are pulled up directly to it, and the doors open and close like a normal transport would. It's not Rex, but I can't remember the exact definition, but it's a Rex droid, from the cantina.
It's driving it.
Is driving it and telling you, go to Oga's Cantina.
Got it.
Going
Okay.
places
So
to go.
I want to reverse that for a minute. If we know that at some point they're going to have this empty facility, that they can do a whole bunch of things with it. They can change the timeline. We had heard rumors that there was going to be a Life Day cruise, which would be your holiday adventure, change the timeline. The problem is the timeline's tied to Batuu, and that's very specific in where it is. And you guys probably experience it all the time. You walk into Batuu and you hear somebody come in and go, "Where's Darth Vader?" Like, yeah, that's where Disney sort of missed things, right? And I understand that because I look for Vader too, and then always over in that launch bay thing or whatever. That's a ridiculous answer. But here's my question. And Ed, you and I've talked about this off camera. Would you be willing to pay an extra fee at Batuu to take a transport to operate the bridge, or to go to one of these games, Patrick,
or to go to a live show dinner with Gaia.
A dinner show with Gaia, or go to whatever. Maybe it is lightsaber training. Hey, you're one of the Saja. You meet them in Galaxy's Edge and they put you on a transport and you go up and they get some path that takes you right into the saber training and then you come back down. They could turn this 2-day immersive experience into people visiting it, paying a fee to experience one of the games. It's an interesting idea. What do you guys think?
And the other thing too we have to consider is this hotel has a full kitchen as well.
Well, that's why the dinner show that Patrick mentioned.
So we do. Is that one of the things that we think it could potentially be? Is a dinner theater?
I would do it.
That we get.
I would do it.
I have no idea what legally they would be allowed to do. Some of the verbiage that they used in their statement with JP Morgan Chase was accelerated depreciation, which means they're going to write it off on their taxes.
Right.
And I don't know. I don't know the line because I'm not a business person. I know that, say, like Warner Brothers wrote off Batgirl, and that film will never see the light of day
because they wrote it off. Yeah.
Right. What is considered the Galactic Starcruiser? Is it the physical building? Can they never use the building again? Or is it the show that is Galactic Starcruiser, and they have to retheme it and call it something else?
The 2-day experience. Because look, Patrick, I think it'd be awesome knowing what you know about that. You arrive, you go into the atrium, the gift shop's open, you go to the music theater, you have dinner, you watch a show, and then you go back to Batuu. That's awesome. I'd pay $100 a person to do that.
I think
it'd be like
possible.
$500 a person.
I was going to say,
I think it would be possible.
You're in the dreamland, Sam. If you think it's $100,
I know it's not going to be.
Imagine Be Our Guest or Cinderella's Castle, except you pull up to a first-class place that takes you on a shuttle into a hotel, and they say, "Oh, here's our bridge. You're on a starship." And then during your dinner at the end of the show, there's an emergency, and you have to go do the thing on the bridge. And dinner time is 6 p.m. and there's show elements until, say, 10 p.m. and the experience ends and you leave.
Yes. And the way that's created, it's the atrium and all of the things on 2 stories up in the front, maybe 3 if you count the top. You could close off the hallway that goes to all the rooms. You just there's a door that closes. You would never know that you are attached to 50 rooms down a hallway on 2 different floors. It could be done.
It could be done, absolutely. All of these things could be done. Every idea that any one of us 4 come up with could be done. When Bob Iger took over, he completely demolished, he eliminated the immersive entertainment department. There were some people that were kept and move around, but the entire department was eliminated.
Yeah, the meta department, I think, is what they called it. Right?
The entire department was gone.
Was one of the first.
So this is not, as far as I love this thing. I hope that all of these things come true. I don't see this happening again for a long time, the way that it's done as it was. If Ann Morrow and Scott Trowbridge are trying to do this again, they should knock on Universal's door and say, Scott Trowbridge should say, "Hey, I helped open Universal. I know you got this. I got you this new park coming over here. That's going to be the biggest park in the world. You got some extra space. We got some ideas."
They might already have some of those ideas.
I want to go to Hogwarts for 2 days. How about that?
So they were actively working on show changes. The Imagineers that this job
Starcruiser.
For Starcruiser.
Yes.
The Imagineers
like the Life
for
Day, right?
Starcruiser.
Beyond
I
Life
don't
Day?
know any specifics.
Okay.
The person that I spoke to signed an NDA.
Of course.
Mhm.
We're all under NDA too.
Yeah. Friend DA, right?
Friend DA.
This will
No,
never
I get
go
it,
on
but
the internet.
we know that they were thinking things.
They
and I
actively up to that week, the cast and crew, up until the moment they were told, thought that they might be installing new story changes. A crew member specifically told me, I can't tell you what's going to happen today because it's a training day, and that's code for it might be some show changes. And that person got off of work saying they told us they were closing.
Wow.
That's way upper management then coming with that decision, I would
It
say,
is.
as opposed to it trickling down, deciding on it.
To be perfectly honest, I think it makes sense when I take my Star Wars fan, my Starcruiser fan hat off and think about it from a business perspective. If you're looking at your stock price going down and you see that you need to cut things where you can, and there's honestly, I'm not trying to get political, but there's a war brewing in the state of Florida. And you have to just have your coffers filled. This is really low fruit to pick because it wasn't making the money back that you had amortized it to make.
Right.
got it.
Sure.
So I had asked, I had an opportunity to ask Trowbridge about Life Day experiences and what may or may not be coming. And is there plans for holiday type entertainment and cruises? And I think I asked it by saying, how often is Life Day? Is it an annual event? Does it happen in December? Kind of, to try and his answer was, it's on our radar and I can't make any comments, which made me think, yeah, they're planning it because he won't say no. Otherwise, he would have said, no, it's not on the radar. But that could have been cool, but that's just like holidays at sea on the Disney Cruise Lines. Does it change the storyline? Probably not. It adds some decorations.
Right.
And Chewbacca, it could have been interesting.
Yeah, it would have been.
Man,
Wears
it
a
could
red
be cool.
robe.
Well, no, we could have gone to the Wookiee planet and we could have gone to Kashyyyk and got all these Wookiees come on and all of them in red robes and done something cool in the atrium. How about that? You could have done
I mean, again, we can talk about all the problems, but they shoehorn themselves with the climate simulator because it's open to Orlando
weather.
air.
Yeah.
So if you
Right.
say you're going somewhere else and the climate simulator is, I guess that's not true.
No, it's a
because
simulation.
when you're on
climate.
the ship,
Yeah, simulation.
yeah,
climate.
it's a simulator. And
If
you
they're
go
doing a
to
Life
different
Day,
places
as long as
on
they have
this.
B. Arthur working in the bar, I'm going. That's the priority. So the next
Yeah,
few months
Yeah.
are completely sold out. What
Yes.
they did was
sold out.
they had the people that had booked past past the time. They were able to book first. All discounts were null and void. But they got a discount. I understand the people that had booked ahead.
50%.
50%.
Well, yeah, because they were booked and they're making them change.
And they're making-
right?
yeah,
you
yeah,
got to change
exactly.
the plans.
And then it opened up to the general public, and from what I understand, is the entire system crashed and it sold out in seconds. Is this a sign that Disney is going to be? Could this change their mind?
No.
Could they go? Maybe
No.
we should do something with this
Yeah.
building. I mean, they're not going to extend it, but is this something that they might go? We should revisit it. I mean,
Well, I think the
I-
tax break thing he was talking about as far as writing it off is
Maybe.
going to be the answer there.
Yeah.
So
Well, and one of the things Patrick mentioned earlier, there's 6-month contracts. So clearly the contracts end
mhm.
when the last booking happens.
It
And if
opened
they
in
had a-
March. They end 6 months later.
Right. So that's when this whole thing ends, when the contracts are up. Don't renew the contracts. Let everybody walk. Otherwise, you're in it for another 6 months and you get the same challenge on your head of booking it.
Yeah.
I think what happened in the spirit of us as all Disney nerds, they announced it's closing and everyone that said maybe someday I'll do it now has a
Deadline.
that got to do it now. I have a deadline. They booked it. It's gone. They're in.
Yeah.
I have a few travel agent friends who were on the May the 4th trip that are real life friends now.
Cool.
And they were on the phone for open to close from, I guess, what's that, like 7 a.m. my time or whenever the phone lines open Eastern until they closed. So I guess that's like 10 hours. She was on hold. They were on hold for the day. They said, one of them said they were able to book 500 people because she can only work travel agents can only work in 90-minute blocks as they're booking. So they have all the information and book as fast as they can. But in those 90-minute windows, when the system let them in, travel agents booked as many people in 90 minutes, and the entire thing sold out in 8 hours. But as far as I know, it was like you said, all the people that are like, I have to do this because it's going away.
Yeah.
I was close to that.
Well, even I was considering
It's a
it
sense of urgency.
like for a brief second.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Ed was too.
I think there still might be some openings come up. There are going to be some people who
Cancel out.
not making any judgments on doing this, because if you want to do it, do your thing. But they told different travel agents different times and got booked at multiple times, and then they'll go, I actually want this one. And if it's outside the 30-day window, they can cancel the others. So there might be some rooms that open up. And truly, if you want to go, I highly recommend, as weird as it sounds, getting on a Facebook group called the Suitemate Finder. I know people, a person who went on Suitemate Finder, found someone who was booked on the final cruise of the Halcyon and said, hey, I'll pay my way, whatever it is, to split the room 5 ways, and I just want to be there. And he's never met these people before, but that's how he's doing it. So if you want to do it, I highly recommend doing it. I've heard no bad stories about Suitemate Finder.
Yeah, I was going to say Disney community wise, I think there's a good shot that it would work out pretty well.
Yeah.
That's a tough sell in most parts of this world, but yeah, that would work.
Yeah.
Patrick, I'm assuming you've done the lightsaber building experience at Galaxy's Edge. How does
Yes.
that compare to your stay on, like, as far as details and immersiveness and whatnot?
The immersion is kind of at that same level, but imagine never having to leave the environment that you feel like once you're inside Savi's. When you walk out the door, there's nobody. Well, I mean, there could be somebody in shorts and a t-shirt, but nobody else is going to talk to you as if you're outside the Star Wars world.
Yeah.
So the immersion just continues with you at all times.
Yeah.
There is no outside the bubble till you get to your room.
The only thing that I've ever been able to do to deflate is go to the room or go to the climate simulator.
Yeah. Yeah, because I've done like Star Wars Celebrations 4 times. I've done the Star Wars cruise since episode 1, 2, 3, and every other movie that came out after that. I went opening night. But the lightsaber building is by far my favorite experience I've ever done, as far as being in the Star Wars universe. And it's sad.
Can I tell you guys a quick story about just a quick story of how the narration can carry with you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sure.
So on my second cruise, as I told you guys, I had that backstory of how I got on board. I told that to a particular Saja. That Saja then talked to me. It was a pretty empty cruise. It was about 45% full. She had some extra time on her hands. She wasn't fully booked and pulled away by other passengers. I can improv, but I cannot do it for 20 minutes at a time. So I was talking about my real kids who were not there, but I was talking about my real kids. And we were bonding, like a real person bonding about my children. So then when I got to see the Yoda holocron thing, I mean, to be perfectly honest, I was moved to tears because I had my kids in mind. Well, on the second day of that January trip, my father-in-law surprised me by asking me to go on the May the 4th trip. So then in that intervening time, I started preparing as much as I could, and I reached out to that actress because we had found each other on social media, and I said, hey, I know you can't tell me the answer because you're a Disney employee, but is there any way that I'm going to get to see you on the May the 4th trip? I'm going to ask anyway. And she said, well, Saja Kier, the character you met, will not be there, I'm sorry to say, but our paths might cross. And that's where she left it. And so I took that and ran with it, and I 3D printed a lightsaber and hand painted it. And I made my intentions known to some of the other Saja that I had a gift for Saja Kier. I knew she wasn't going to be here, but I wanted to give her something. If that means leaving it with you, that's fine. But I'm giving it to her. They changed my schedule. I was trying to go first order. I was trying to be a bad guy. And they manually, from what I understand, pushed me and added me to the Jedi reveal. And in walks Rey, and it is the same actress who was playing Saja Kier.
Nice.
Wow.
And then after the reveal, she had a moment with Croy. Croy, the lieutenant, comes up and is like, "You're the one!" And she uses the Force to stop him, and there's nothing to see here, and turns him away. And then she sends everybody up and says, "I need to go hide. I need to get out of sight." And she said, "Tap." I turn my name backwards when I'm on board. I use a fake name.
Cool.
And so I
Good,
say
easy.
Tap for
Good.
short. She says, Tap, do you have a moment? And she pulls me aside, and I got 3.5 minutes alone with Ray.
That's cool.
That's awesome.
And I gave her a hand-built
That's so
lightsaber that I made and gave to her. And there was
Did she do a Luke and
her.
just roll over her shoulder?
No, I told her to be careful. That was actually the thing that broke.
That's funny.
But the only people that saw it were me, the actress, the crew member that was right there watching the engineering room, and 2 members of the group that I was like kind of a part of that are friends. And I asked, like, hey, if you're around, can you record this? I blacked out. I don't remember it. The only reason I remember it is because somebody took the video. But that's
so cool,
that's
dude.
the sort of like personal experience that every single person on board will go out of their way to give you. And whatever I say, I want to try to remind people, the people that work there are the most fantastic employees that Disney has ever had. The reviews, everything that has been said about it by the people that have experienced it is that it is bar none the best experience they've ever had. And so I hope it is remembered for the memories, the friendships, all the fantastic, mind-blowing experiences that are once in a lifetime that will never be recreated.
That is special. That is so cool.
That story is why they will live on.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah. I think years from now, we're going to be going, why did they ever close that place? It was so magical. It was
No,
so
years from
amazing.
now, there'll be something else.
Yeah,
But
I
we
know.
have to hear
I
these
mean, I still say that
experiences.
about
That's the
Galaxy,
difference.
about the arcade that was at Disney Springs. Why did they ever close that place? I mean, I didn't go.
Galaxy
I went a
Quest
couple
was
of times,
phenomenal.
but yeah.
And to give it a full circle here, I'm not going to be able to take my youngest kid. My wife is going to stay home with my youngest kid, but my father-in-law was able to book us at the end of June.
Nice.
So I'm going to take my 5-year-old on the Starcruiser, and
cool.
I'm going to see it through my 5-year-old's eyes.
Oh, that is
That's
I may come back dehydrated because I'm going to be crying the whole time. I'm going to be drinking alcohol and then crying the whole time.
Good plan. Perfect.
okay.
It's gonna
Well, we
happen.
got to wrap this up. Ed, what's happening with Disney Nerds?
The Disney Nerds are doing good. The Disney Nerds podcast this week, we have a show coming out that has Sam and myself in Disney, the Disney 100th exhibit up in Philadelphia.
Oh.
So listen in. Our co-host Morgan is down in North Carolina at the Marvel exhibit down at the museum near her. So we've got some exclusive interviews. The nerds are on the road.
Excellent. And Sam, we talked about Sam's Disney Diaries. You got stuff going
Yeah,
on all
look,
the time.
all the time. In addition to helping Ed out anytime I can with the nerds, we did some Animal Kingdom, What's Next over at Dinoland, and some transportation videos here recently. So
I'd like to do a show about Dinoland one day, about all the details that are there, because it's very, very detailed.
All the details that are gone now. They're all gone now is the
I know.
problem. Most of the stuff is
Piece by
disappeared. It's not there. Those games are disappearing one at a time.
Yeah.
Also did something that's been really popular is Happily Ever After with the lyrics and the script for the entire show. That's a fun one.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. Patrick, do you have anything to plug? You were talking about San Diego Comic-Con.
Yeah, so I'm not an organizer. I'm just shouting out some friends. There's a big group of, honestly, kind of rock stars. The Thank the Maker pod. They're all rock stars in real life. They're putting together an event the Friday night of San Diego called Mosh Isley. And it's basically just an emo party at a bar. Everybody dresses up in costume. I'll be in my Starcruiser costume because that's just
Is it
what
the
it's
same
gonna be.
costume every time, or did you get another one?
I've changed it a little bit every time.
Okay.
I had big plans to change it more, and that kind of got cut off.
Is there a
Yeah.
website or something that people can go to for that? Or
From what I understand, it's moshisley.com.
moshisley.com. All right, right on. This was a lot of fun, guys. I want to thank you for coming on. Any final thoughts, any of you?
I hope that Disney takes what they've learned and actually can use it and will use it, because some of the memories are exactly what we talk about as far as the Disney experience, how you were treated, how you felt, the magic they made. I hope they take this and can use it somewhere else.
Excellent.
I'd love to see some excursions from that too, up to the Starcruiser. If it's a dinner theater, if it's just a half a day, if it's just visiting for some other reason, I think that's something that my family would be interested in, all of us, as opposed to a 2-day adventure.
Ed?
Yeah, I agree with both reflections there. I totally agree. I am looking forward to something down the road. Looking forward to some of these improvements coming to the, I guess, more normal parts of the parks too. So we will see.
All right. And I call dibs on Ray's lightsaber that goes up. and never comes down. Ken, take it away.
If you have a brilliant idea for a future edition of The Solo Show and would like to take your turn in the guest host's chair, then drop us an email at thesoloshow01@gmail.com. Tell us your idea for the show, and we'll contact you about a date and a time for you to join us. If you would just like to keep the conversation going or have a comment about a previous show, then visit us on Facebook at The Solo Show. All logos, sounds, and songs that are made by and for Disney and its affiliates are owned solely by the Disney Corporation and are not, nor are they intended to be, the ownership of The Solo Show podcast. We hope you'll join us for the next adventure on The Solo Show. Thanks for listening, and bye for now.